Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Nikitinaknits. My name is Evgenia and in this video I want to show you 9 new knitting patterns that were released in the March of 2025. Every design I'm going to be speaking about today is gorgeous. I would knit myself every single one of them and I think they deserve attention. Some designs are already being released and some of them are just about to be released in the end of March. As usually I do in my knitting pattern roundups, I'm going to be speaking about the yarn choice. Would I go with the recommended yarn or would I substitute it with something, so that you discover for yourself not only new patterns but also some interesting yarns to use. And I want to start with a pattern that is actually not released yet. It's going to be released in the end of March. Today is 15th of March as I'm recording this video, and maybe by the time you're watching this video, or even if it's past the March already, it could be already released, so check it out. The pattern is Fresno Sweater Chunky by Knitonomy or Magdalena Parker. It's quite oversized, it's very wearable, maybe not under the coat or a jacket but just on its own, which is very appropriate for spring. And to be honest, I'm getting really cold usually, and I could find this sweater useful even in late summer nights. So the sweater, as I already said, is gorgeous. When I just look at it, I'm losing my words, I'm losing my mind. If I just imagine myself walking in this sweater, I feel very feminine and free and light and warm at the same time. I would just wear it with a pair of super light trousers or maybe even leggings if I need this long enough. So yeah, I could easily see myself throwing on the sweater, going on a picnic or maybe a forest walk and feeling very warm, cozy and feminine. While this pattern is in testing, I could already gather some information from the Instagram page of the designer, and I could see that it's an Aran weight project with a 21 stitch per 10 centimeters. I imagine in this braids pattern. It's knit on 5.5mm needles, and I'm really happy with the size ranges for this sweater because usually I'm really struggling to find the smaller one. I don't like really huge sweaters, and this one has really good sizing both on the small side and on the big side. The yarn recommended is really expensive but really beautiful. I don't know if I could afford myself this yarn, but let me tell you what it is. It is Cashmere Chairs by Pasquale, held together with Cashmere Manada, again from Pasquale. So Cashmere Chairs is a worsted weight yarn. Each ball contains of 50 grams and 112 meters. It's 70% extra fine merino wool and 30% cashmere, but the merino wool that they use is extremely fine, so it has 17.5 microns. And for comparison, a regular cashmere on the market contains of 22 to 26 microns. So a micron is this diameter of the hair in the yarn, and imagine this extra fine merino that they use contains of 17 microns. It's extremely close to vicuña wool, which is the most expensive yarn in the world. I didn't know how they managed to find such thin merino wool. I would love to touch that. So I looked up for the price, and the price is 27 euros per 50 grams. So for one ball is really a lot of money. But to be honest, I'm very curious to feel the softness of this yarn. I would love to find this yarn in the yarn shops and try it for educational purposes. But yeah, it's extremely luxurious, and it's combined with another strand of yarn from Pasquale, which is very similar to a silk mohair, the regular silk mohair that we all use. It has 25 grams, 200 meters per ball, and it has 45% super kid mohair, 25% silk, 15% yak, and 15% virgin wool, which is a super fine merino. So the combination is quite nice, and I think it will feel incredibly luxurious. To be honest, I don't want to even imagine how much this sweater would cost if I would go with the recommended yarn. The price for Pasquale Manada, the second strand of yarn, would be 15 euro per ball, which I find also really expensive. So finally, I found an alternative that I want to offer you if you wish to knit this sweater and if you're searching also for the replacement. The first option is still quite luxurious and fancy, you could say. It's Lane lamb's wool, and it contains of 100 extra fine or ultra fine merino wool, and it has 26 microns, so it's extremely soft as cashmere. It looks like cashmere is also spun in the way that the original yarn, the recommended yarn, is spun, but it's no cashmere and it's cheaper. So the price is 15 to 18 euro on average per 50 gram ball, and you get more meterage than Pasquale. So it's still way more affordable. It's still expensive though. And the second option is a mainstream, which is way cheaper but still gorgeous, is from Fivel, which is 100% Norwegian wool. Norwegian wool is usually quite rustic, but they say that this specific yarn is not as rustic as a normal Norwegian wool, and it has a very interesting spun, like a little blown spun, which ends up in a very lightweight garment, very warm and holds the structure quite well, while being not as harsh as Norwegian wool to the skin. So that is the main strand, and the second strand I would recommend is Holst Garn Lucia, which is the same meterage as Pasquale Manada, is 200 meters per 25 grams. It has a slightly different contents, but it looks exactly the same. So instead of mainly mohair containing fiber, it mainly contains alpaca. So it's 42% alpaca, 35% silk, 13% merino wool, and 10% yak. So as you can see, it's quite similar. It looks similar, but is way cheaper. I could find in Spain for 850 euro per ball, which is almost twice cheaper as Pasquale Manada. So there you go, the recommendations for the future sweater. And finally, the construction. As the sweater is not out yet, I could only look at the testers and guess how the construction works. It's quite simple, so I can already explain how it's going to be knit. You start with the back panel, you knit a trapezoid shape, and then you're going a little bit back to the armholes, putting it on hold, picking up stitches at the right shoulder, knitting front to the neckline, doing the same with the left side, connecting things in the neckline, and knitting the body flat to the armholes. After that, you're connecting two pieces back and the front together, knitting the body down until desired length. I think I would knit it a bit more extended as it was designed, and then picking up stitches at the sleeves and knitting them top down to desired length. Gorgeous braids would knit up so fast, and I cannot wait for the pattern to be released. The next sweater is Artist Sweater by Lene Rix. Extremely cozy, roomy sweater, which I feel like wearing every day, going for groceries, just having a walk next to my house. I feel it's very casual but special at the same time because of these little details at the shoulders. The whole sweater features these beautiful saddle shoulders, quite deep armhole. The body is quite wide as well, and also you have quite wide neck, so it doesn't irritate your skin here, which is my problem all the time. So I found this pattern very functional, quite minimalistic, but beautiful and special at the same time. It looks quite classy and elegant as well, so it could be work appropriate. I also like these split hem details in the bottom of the sweater, and the back hem is longer than the front hem. So the whole sweater is knit on 6mm needles, which is extremely fast, and it is 15 stitch gauge, and she recommends DK plus lace, which is Isair Alpaca 3. It is 50% alpaca, 50% wool, and the yarn is not spun, but it has this chain structure. And the second strand is Isair Silk Mohair, which is actually what I'm wearing today. And I really love that mohair. It's extremely soft. Of course, I would use this in this pattern. I've never tried Alpaca 3, which is the first strand, so I would go with the recommended yarn. I think it's going to be warm, lightweight, cozy, and hopefully durable with time. This sweater is very much spring appropriate because it's quite airy, as I already said, so you don't get very sweaty and hot in it. So the construction is quite interesting. It's a mix between saddle shoulder and the contiguous shoulder as for me. So you cast some stitches at the neck, and then you work back and forth while increasing both for the front and for the back with this very beautiful type of increases that add specific element of design to the sweater, going back and forth, increasing also for the neckline depth. And when you're done with that, you're casting on stitches at the neck, joining the work in the round and knitting in the round until you reach the length of the shoulder, necessary length. After that, you're putting stitches on hold of the front and the shoulder, and then knitting back flat separately to the down of the armholes. After that, you're doing the same for the front piece, basically also working flat. Then connecting back and front piece together, knitting the body down to the hems, and then picking up stitches at the sleeves, knitting the sleeves down. After that, you're picking up stitches at the neckline and knitting it up until desired height. I quite like that you knit the neck separately, which I always struggle with. I'm always worried that if I start with the neck, then knit the entire sweater, then I don't like the neck. And I've had the situation a few times and not a good feeling. So it's really nice that you knit it afterwards and you can adjust it. Quite interesting construction. I've never knit such constructions, so it would be interesting to try, but I think it's quite simple and the instructions should be clear. The next pattern is Camelia Cardigan by So Min Kim, or Knits pour moi. This is one of my favorite designers. I'm about to cast on one of her other designs, and she came up with the cardigan that is actually sticked. Sticked is when you need to cut through the fabric, so you need the whole cardigan in the round like you would knit a pullover, and then you would cut with your scissors through the fabric, which is quite scary, but the instructions seem to be quite clear, and this is a designer with a good reputation, so I would definitely trust her even if that would be your first sticking project. The cardigan on a picture is a little bit oversized. I think I would prefer a bit more fitted look of such cardigan, and I hope if I would go for the smallest size mentioned, I would reach that more fitted look, but I don't know, because the smallest size is 100 centimeters of the cardigan circumference, which is a bit too much for me. but let's see, maybe it's going to be fine if I knit this. So this is an all over color work sweater. It looks a bit complicated, especially for beginners, but believe me, it's not that bad because it's quite simple construction, which I'm going to explain after the yarn. So the yarn is recommended is a sport weight. It is 23 stitches per 10 centimeters in color work, and the recommended yarn is Merinos Angora by Boucle Lane, which is a 90% merino wool and 10% Angora rabbits. I actually have another yarn from this brand in my stash and I'm already really loving it, so I do suggest you to discover that yarn. It is beautiful little brand in France that is run by two very kind women in France. I'm in love with the approach to their production and the way they interact with the clients and the whole energy that they have within their brand, so I would definitely go with this recommended yarn. The construction is knitted top down. You start at the neck without the neckline first. You knit back and forth very little bit until you create that little depth at the back of the neck, so your neck is not flat but a little bit more rounded. After that, you're adding stitches for the front here, the neckline, and connecting the whole knit in the round. You're adding also stick stitches through which you're going to cut the fabric later, and then you're knitting a regular raglan while following a colorwork chart. Then you're knitting the raglans in the round until necessary depth of your armholes. After that, you're splitting for sleeves just like a normal raglan. You're knitting the body down, everything in the round, and finishing with the ribbing. After you're done with the body, you're taking stitches that were on hold in the sleeves and knitting them down with the decreases. And after all, you're picking up stitches at the neckline and folding it over, creating this beautiful double layered neckline. And when you're done with the sticking, the most tricky part, you're knitting double knitted edges with holes for the buttons, sewing on the buttons, and there you have a cardigan. Quite a lot of effort. Sport weight yarn, not such a fast knit, but I think it's definitely worth it. It's very spring appropriate, very summer appropriate. Again, in the very late nights in summer, it would be beautiful. And this 10% of Angora in the recommended yarn is going to give this very tiny fluff that is barely noticeable, but is extremely warm and soft to your skin that only you are probably going to notice. There's also a Camelia Sweater, and I spoke about the sweater version in one of my videos. It was a Korean and Japanese colorwork pattern roundup. If you love this type of colorwork projects and you would love to discover more Asian projects, I suggest you to go through entire playlist and get inspired. I'm going to leave the link in the description box. To be honest, I don't know which color would I pick if I would go for such cardigan. I really love the first sample that the designer knit. It has this beautiful dusty flowers and the gray elements in between. I also love that the flowers are not all the same. They have different shapes and different motifs, which is quite beautiful detail to the pattern. The next sweater is so beautiful. It's Hanna Sweater by Paula Strickt, and as today is 15th of March, this sweater was not released in English yet. It was only released in German. However, most of her designs, I think all of her designs, are released in English as well, and a lot of people are waiting for it to be released in English, so I'm 99% sure that it will be released in English quite soon. But I also know from YouTube statistics that 50% of my viewers are from Germany, so you guys can already buy and enjoy this pattern. And actually I tried to Google translate the description of the design and it was quite clear to me, so maybe if I would desperately want to knit this right now, I would buy the pattern and Google translate it and it will be fine. The sweater is quite oversized. It's recommending 15 centimeters of positive ease, but not more than 45 centimeters of positive ease. I saw the size range and I could not find a size for me, unfortunately. I'm on a too small side, so 15 centimeters of positive ease would be 98 centimeters of the garment, and the smallest circumference of the garment is 114 centimeters, so I don't fit within that range. But if I would knit this, I would maybe mostly wear it at home, because at home I usually get cold. I knit a lot, I work a lot at home, and I really love to feel warm and cozy, and something long would really fit me. So yeah, it's not a big deal that I don't have my size, but maybe I would see how the pattern is increasing the sizes, in what manner, and maybe I would try to modify it a little bit to a smaller side. The pattern suggests a worsted weight yarn held together with a silk mohair. She's recommending Lamana Como, which is 100% superfine merino wool, and it held together with a kid silk mohair, which is Lamana Premia. And Lamana Premia is a thinner thread than a regular mohair. It has 300 something meters per 25 grams. So Lamana brand overall and Lamana Como Grande is quite expensive yarns, and while I would love to try some of their yarns, I don't think think I would go for this specific project with such yarn, because first the sweater is huge, and second I want it to be really durable, because if I would wear it at home, personally for me, I wouldn't like to use the yarn that is so expensive and so luxurious at home. So I would go with the Peruvian Highland wool. I've never tried, for example, Filcolana Peruvian, which is quite a popular yarn, and I would love to try it. Or wool of the Andes, I really like their color palette. So I would hold one of those yarns plus any silk mohair that I want, or strand of baby alpaca or sur alpaca. I don't know about the second strand yet, but if you want some inspiration on those additional strands, I have a whole video that is called 15 mohair substitutes. When you don't want to go for mohair, there's tons of different alternatives, and I created a whole video on that. You can find it on my channel, and I will put the link in the description box. The whole garment is knit on 5mm needles, and the gauge is 21 stitch per 10 centimeters in cabled pattern. Cable pattern is very beautiful, quite harmonious. You have these beautiful lines of cables facing each other that are separated from each other by these two lines of slip stitch. I think it's a slip stitch. The pattern doesn't look overstimulated or busy. It looks very clean, very beautiful, and everything is set on point. The construction is a similar construction to the one we already spoke today. You start at the back panel, knitting a trapezoid shaped panel. After that, you pick up stitches at the right shoulder, knitting front to the neckline, doing the same on the left side, connecting stitches here flat and knitting the body flat down to the armholes. After that, you're connecting two panels together, casting on stitches at the armhole, and knitting the sweater until desired length. I would probably block the sweater at this point because it's a big length and it can change quite a lot after blocking. So after that, you're picking up stitches at the armholes and knitting the sleeves down until the desired length. I imagine doing some decreases, and in the end you're doing the neckline. You're picking up stitches, and here it looks like it's a double folded neckline. So very beautiful cozy knit, and we're waiting for the English version to come out very soon. The next one is Morac Pullover by ttoknit, which is a Korean designer, and this is a blouse. I am in love with blouses, as you can see, and I'm already going to knit another one and another one. And this pattern caught my eye with this beautiful stitch pattern. Is this vertical lines that have little holes that is not so much see-through. I mean, you can wear a tank top or a very minimalistic bra that will still show up a little bit, but for me it's not so much. I really love that. I'm also in love with this beautiful white boat neck that can actually show up the bones very nicely in a feminine, gentle way. And also I love tapered sleeves that are not so wide, which is quite practical. And you have a beautiful seam at the shoulder. It's not exactly super fitted shoulder, but it's not a drop shoulder, so it's something in between. It lines up right at the edge of the shoulder, which is very beautiful. I'm knitting now a sweater that has a similar construction. I'm in love. So the description is not so explicit, so I suggest if you start this blouse, you already have some knitting experience, a few garments that you need top down with a set-in sleeve construction. There's no explanation exactly how it's knit. I will try to find some pictures on Instagram of the processes of other people who knit the sweater. If I can find, I put them on a screen. It says it has a set-in sleeve construction, but some designers mean a set-in sleeve when you knit in the round and increasing for the sleeve at the same time, and sometimes they call them set-in sleeves when you knit the body separately and then picking up stitches and creating a sleeve cap with a short rows, and then joining in the round and knitting the sleeves down. So I don't know exactly how the sleeve is knit up, but the construction is quite simple, and I would risk knitting this blouse even though there is no explicit description on Ravelry on how everything is made. So I still believe in the pattern and I would still knit that. The blouse is knit on 4mm needles with only 2 strands of your favorite mohair. I would go with Isair silk mohair. I'm in love with the softness of it, and it doesn't shed and it has very beautiful colors, so I would maybe go again with this one. It has 21 stitch per 10 centimeters in pattern, and I think it could knit up quite fast and it would be such a beautiful spring knit. I'm in love with mohair blouses and I could wear them all day. I'm knitting myself a few more similar garments because this one I'm wearing all the time, everywhere, and I'm just afraid that it's going to look bad very soon, sooner than it should be. Alright, the next one is socks. The first time in the history of my channel I speak about socks in my pattern roundup. I never spoke about socks because I'm not a sock knitter, knitter, but this one really caught my eye and I decided to even speak about it in my pattern roundup, which is quite weird. I usually speak only about sweaters, cardigan and vests. So the pattern is called Nadine Socks by Polish designer Hanna Szatanowska. I find this pattern extremely spring appropriate, very beautiful option for the gift knit. It looks quite a lot of effort, but she's saying in the description that it's not as complicated as it looks. I never needed a flounce in my life, this very beautiful ruffled edge. I would love to try that. And also I think such socks could be very appropriate to wear with sandals. I still haven't bought myself sandals that could be worn with lace socks, and it's my little dream that still didn't come true. It would create such beautiful vintage look and that I'm trying to incorporate into my wardrobe. So these socks, either with a flounce on top or without it, would fit sandal look very perfectly. So that's why I also think it's very spring appropriate. The socks are knitted with a light fingering weight, which has 420 meters per 100 grams, and they're knit on 2.25 millimeter needles. You start at the top, you knit the flounce, and then you're knitting the folded cuff. After that, you're going down with a stitch pattern, and then knitting a traditional stockinette, heel flap, and gusset, and then continuing down to the toes and finishing up with the decrease as we usually do in socks. So nothing complicated, just need to look at the chart, and I think these socks deserve some attention, and I think it would be so beautiful with sandals. I need to get them. The next one is a very cozy cardigan that is called Soushun by Ririko, which is a Japanese designer. As you can see, I'm quite a fan of Korean and Japanese designers. I understood that I'm lacking a homeware quite a lot in my wardrobe, so this piece could be another home garment that I would enjoy so much. It has quite a lot of room, it's quite oversized, it has optional pockets in the front. I would personally add some belt to it if I would need this. I've seen before some other cardigans that I would need for the house, but there were some either slip stitch pattern or some cables or something else, and I didn't want to put a lot of effort for the home knit, but I wanted to look it nice and cozy, long and not complicated. So this pattern fits all of my expectations, and it features Japanese yarn that I want to try, so all of the cards are falling up together. The whole garment is quite minimalistic, but it features this very barely visible cable in the front, and the whole fabric has a beautiful melange effect to it. The yarn recommended is fingering plus lace, which results in a DK weight. The first thread is called Ito Shimo, which is 80% wool and 20% silk. The wool that is used here is a lamb's wool of 19.5 microns, so you can imagine how soft it is. Again, comparing to cashmere, cashmere is between 22 and 26 microns on average, so it's extremely soft, and 20% of recycled silk, as they're saying. And the second thread is Ito Sensai, which is a silk mohair thread, but it's way thinner than we're used to. Overall, I imagine the Ito Shimo is going to open up and bloom a little bit right after blocking, and the blended in silk will add strength to the garment that should last longer, and it should hold the shape quite well with time. Still, I think it should result in a quite lightweight garment, even though the cardigan is really huge. It's knit on 4mm needles with 20 stitches per 10 centimeters gauge in stockinette. And the construction is quite interesting. I've never tried anything similar. So you see this little cable in the front, this tiny motif. First you need like a line at the back of your collar of this cabled motif, and after you need this line, you're picking up stitches here at the shoulder. I imagine you casting them on and then knitting the front left panel together with the cable. After that, you're doing the same for the right side. You're casting on stitches and knitting the right panel down to the armhole. Then you're putting stitches on hold, picking up stitches all the way across the right shoulder, collar, and the left shoulder for the back piece, knitting the piece down flat to the armholes, and then connecting to front panels and the back panel together, knitting flat the cardigan until desired length, also featuring the cable, right? And then picking up stitches at the sleeves, knitting them down. I don't know if there's again short rows at the sleeves. If there's none, I would make a few turns here at the sleeve cap. That would add me a little bit better shaping, but I don't know, maybe there is. So then you're doing the sleeves until desired length, doing the ribbing in the end of the sleeves, and optionally knitting the pockets if you wish. I think for the home cardigan, I would for sure knit the pockets. That's quite useful. The next one is the most unique vest that I've ever seen. It is the Bloomfield Vneck vest by Magdalena Parker or Knitonomy. Why this vest is so special? Because in the front you have two panels that are knit horizontally and the back panel is knit vertically. So I found it extremely gorgeous, beautiful, and while I've seen a few patterns before like that you know, it has a mix of constructions. I've always been quite skeptical towards them because something was constantly stopping me from knitting them, either the fit or the size ranges or anything else. But when I saw this vest, I was like, I'm going to knit this. It's gorgeous. So let's first speak about the yarn gauge and then construction, because construction is the most interesting part. The yarn is quite a luxurious choice. She's suggesting Cardiff Cashmere Silka 8, which is a sport weight yarn that contains 70% of cashmere and 30% silk, held together with the Cardiff Cashmere Brush Light, which is a light fingering weight, and it contains of also mix of brushed cashmere and silk. Very silky, very cashmere-like vest that would cost a lot. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of color selection of Cardiff Cashmere Silka 8. Plus, it's not very possible to buy in every single shop. So I would personally not go with this yarn recommendation, but if you like the colors and if you have the budget, of course, that would be a gorgeous choice. I would go for a different combination. As the first strand, I would pick Length Lisa, which is 70% viscose, 10% silk, and 20% wool. It is also a sport weight, so it fits the midridge. And as a second thread, I would get a Length Cashmere Dreams, which is a lace weight that is also a mix of brushed cashmere and silk, but it is thinner than Cardiff Cashmere Brush Light. So for the price, you get more midridge. And since Length Lisa is a bit thicker than Cardiff Silka 8, you're getting a perfect balance so that you can meet the gauge. The gauge is 27 stitches per 10 centimeters in cabled pattern and is knit on 4mm needles. So finally, the construction. This designer doesn't explain how everything is knit in her descriptions, but I've never heard any complaints about this designer, so everything is clear. There's video tutorials, she has good reputation, so I would definitely trust her even though she doesn't put description, which I would like actually to say description of the pattern that I'm going to knit. So I had to go to the pictures of projects on Ravelry and see some information about how the pieces knit up, and I found out that you need 3 pieces separately flat. First, you need the back panel flat, just back and forth shaped back. After that, you're knitting 2 panels of the fronts. So you're starting here at the center, casting on stitches and the V-neck line, knitting horizontally to the armhole, and here shaping the armhole, I imagine, with the increases. Then you're doing the same for the left side. After that, you're seaming up everything together here at the side seam and here at the shoulders. And then when you're done with that, you're picking up stitches for the ribbing here at the bottom band and at the armholes. You're doing the Italian bind off for both armholes and the bottom band. Obviously doing the holes for the buttons and attaching the buttons. Beautiful piece, interesting construction. She's saying that this pattern is for advanced knitters who are open to new techniques. I don't know if I'm an advanced knitter, probably not, but I'm open for new techniques all the time. So I'm really looking forward to try this pattern one day. And I don't know which color would I pick. Length Lisa that I suggested as a yarn option has a lot of beautiful dusty summer-like colors, and as this piece is released in March, it has a lot of silk content. I guess it would be also appropriate for summer season and early September. So it's a beautiful piece that you could cast on right now if you got inspired. And the last pattern that I want to share with you is also a vest. It is Pole Vest by Morecaknit. I'm not going to speak about this pattern because I spoke about it in my previous video. So if you want to know about this pattern, if it catches your eye, you can go to my previous video and watch about the pole vest, is there in the list, and also gather other inspiration, because in that video I spoke about spring knitting pattern inspirations as well. At this point, that's it. That was my 9 knitting patterns that were released in March of 2025. Thank you very much for being here with me. I hope you got some knitting done while watching this video. If you did, please let me know what you were knitting on here in the comments under this video. I really enjoy reading those comments because I also get some inspiration from you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm hoping to see you soon in my next video.